3, 2, 1. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. And for some ungodly reason, you still have the boredom to watch the shows that I'm producing. I'm once again at Andrei's house 1 year later after the first time you came
Good
to my
day,
show.
everyone. Thank you for having me.
It's been a year. Last time we spoke about your project about the Constitution, and it has been progressing pretty well, especially within our country. So we're not going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about the evolution of constitutional, what do you call it? Not knowledge, awareness.
Awareness, yes, that's a good term.
Constitutional awareness amongst last night, both of us, we were at a protest here in Bucharest against our beloved government and our beloved COVID-19 rules. How's that been going? How do you feel the pulse of the circles we're in? Maybe let's put it this way, not necessarily of the cultural world.
Well, I think that I was just talking to someone about this topic yesterday, and maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was complaining about the fact that people are unaware of what a constitution is, what a constitution should do, what are the limits that we should put on the state, and that generally people are not, having discussions about law and constitution. Mainly because we were taking for granted all like liberties, like going to the gym, going outside after certain hours, or going to a pub. All of these was taken for granted for quite a few years, actually, and nobody was actually discussing that because it's like air. You have it, you don't think about it
Until you don't.
Until you don't.
Yeah, right.
And obviously, restrictions that today are being sold to us by some politicians as being natural were completely unthinkable 2 years ago. I mean, if someone would have told me 2 years ago that we would need to have a paper where a statement needed to go out, I would have said no, that's not good. You should just probably go check your head, because this is not going to happen. I mean, things are bad. The state power has been increased, and the state itself has been encroaching on our liberties. But this is not ever going to happen in the foreseeable future. I mean, it's always it's almost like a bad movie. This is stuff out of the movies, out of things you would see on a bad Netflix flick. Okay.
B-rated movie.
B-rated movie. Yes. I mean, it's the sheer guts the politicians have today, and the again, it's like a bad script. It's like a really bad script. Normally you'd go like, nobody would think that such a thing would work politically or socially, and yet it does, or it still does, because I expect it will not work for a long time. So yeah, this is, I think, because I've been talking about the bad things that have been happening to our liberties during the last year, and a lot of them have happened. On the other hand, people have definitely become aware of what a constitution is. You hear regular people on the streets, people that we've seen at the protests, people that normally you'd see at a mall, maybe in a queue at KFC before going to see a movie. So that was the bulk of the people present there. And you hear people like that talking about my rights, my constitutional rights. So I think this is a good thing happening, because we are kind of relearning things that we shouldn't have forgotten in the first place. So I think this is a good moment for freedom-loving people and law-abiding citizens. And by law, I don't mean any law, just written because someone else wants your time, your money, or your property.
Or rather, rule of law instead of law.
Or rule by law.
By law.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right.
So that's a very fine difference there, that everyone should understand, that you don't. Oh, if you're a politician, you don't always get it your way because you just write down a law. It's morally wrong, and it should be constitutionally wrong everywhere. So I think this is a good aspect, and I think we should take this moment to and take advantage of this moment. Like Obama's former, I think, chief of staff was saying.
Never let a good crisis
yes,
go
never.
to waste.
Yeah, and we should do the same thing. Never let this crisis go to waste. It's a good opportunity for us to talk to our friends and our relatives and about these liberties being directly linked to politicians were writing bad laws or downright unconstitutional laws, as has happened in probably most countries, because now people are beginning to sue the states in many jurisdictions, and what we see, as far as I can observe, is the state constantly losing suits. And I think that's an important aspect to mention here, that if you're the state and you want to pass a law and the people are scared, it's easy to just say, yeah, I have a document here that was approved by scientists, that and that, and which allows me to kind of start curtailing your liberties. But on the other hand, when you call the state in court, you have the right to examine, to bring on your own experts, okay, and to ask the state, okay, provided proof based on which you have instituted those laws. So coming back to your question, I think this is a good opportunity for us to start relearning our liberties and having civil discussions, and hopefully discussions that will lead to some kind of consensus and some kind of
Which is interesting because 3 years ago, starting 4 years ago, but 3 years ago at the most, we've had even bigger protests in defense of the independence of the justice system.
Yes.
And now we see the exact same people who protested then now being upset that other people, and some of those too,
yes,
are now using the independence of the justice system,
yes,
well, against the state. And this is really interesting because we've had too many people talk about the independence of the justice system, but never having necessarily the need to apply it and to see whether it actually works for the general populace. For the most part, the discussion was only about top-tier corruption, things of that, which are very technocratic aspects that most people really don't give a shit about anyway.
Yeah, and exactly.
It doesn't affect most people anyway.
That's
not directly, not visibly.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that those topics didn't actually reach most of the people, because they're kind of arcane. They're kind of like up there. They don't seem to have any immediate impact on your life.
They're pretty elitist.
Yeah. But I mean, you don't really care if you. I mean, as long as you have your belly full, your Netflix, subscription is working, and you have a job, you don't really care that some crooked politician did that and that. Okay, maybe you should, but most people don't. Okay, and for the right reason. I mean, that doesn't affect them directly. But when you're suddenly, cut off from your family, cut off from your friends, cut off from your, the pub you're going to, the church. Then this is the thing. I think the uniqueness of this crisis is that it's really touched everyone globally, and I think this has never ever happened. I mean, even during the wars that we had, there were still like pockets where relative peace. Even the United States during the war. I mean, there was the war effort and whatever, but most of the people are like, yeah, whatever. It's like 5,000 miles away. We don't care about that. So this has reached every little nook and cranny of this planet, and this is interesting in so many ways.
Places there are a few that didn't, but I'm thinking the Tanzania, for instance, is one of those places, but there are very few of them indeed, and it has forced people to think. At the beginning of the crisis, I made a video where I said that we should take advantage politically of this crisis, and I remember that 1 year ago, the discourse was like, it's immoral to try to take advantage of a crisis like this politically.
But everybody has.
But everybody has. And I'm like, hold on a second. Why should we, freedom-loving people, be stupid and not do what literally everyone else does? Every other group, the leftists, the authoritarians, the totalitarians, whatever, the hippies. I mean,
everybody
has tried to craft a portion of the crisis for their use politically, and of course that's natural. I mean,
and I think it's normal. I think when a crisis arises, obviously what the state doesn't get is that most people will have different priorities, and first and foremost, most people will kind of try to see that they are okay, whatever, whoever they are, whoever their objectives are, whether they're like, high-ranking politician or big pharma CEO, or like a guy living in, I don't know, in Tanzania or in Spain. Everyone would still have to act politically. And it's not a bad thing. It's like
people in Tanzania, for instance, were like, our government doesn't want to institute corona rules. Great, let's invite tourists here, because obviously here it's gonna be
like Turkey did. When they started this like whole crazy thing about the COVID passports, and they basically strong-armed the Horeca companies in Spain and Italy into
hospitality industry.
Into basically accepting and asking and begging for that passport, so they just get open. And then Turkey comes along, and says, no, nobody's gonna need any passport, any COVID passport to come over here, and possibly not even tests. And this is going to happen, when,
of course,
and this is like, this is common sense. It's like common sense versus like total insanity.
Yeah, and it's one of the many reasons why I'm very skeptical of things like globalist conspiracies. I mean, of course, there are globalists. Those people exist.
Yeah.
But the idea that they always get their way is wrong, because, well, there is such thing as competing interests.
Yes.
Turkey has an interest in not just reopening, but expanding its tourist industry as much as possible, for obvious reasons. I mean, the Turkish lira has been not in great shape, and obviously the budget needs some surplus, like now.
Yeah. And I think even probably like African countries from the Mediterranean coast will also do that.
Oh, for sure. I don't expect. I mean, Egypt has been operating normally for the entirety of the crisis.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who's recently been to Egypt, like a month ago, it was like the only people wearing masks in Egypt are those who operate with Western tourists, and only when the Western tourist is wearing his.
Oh yeah, okay.
If the white tourist doesn't, then those people won't either.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all a kabuki theater for the most part.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. Last year when we had our conversation, you were still having some doubts on whether it's a cough or not, and you were a bit more understanding with more lenient with. Has that changed, and if yes, how?
Well, look. The thing is, I'm not a scientist, okay, and that is why I always argue on the law, because that is where we kind of establish the way we are going to interact or not. Okay, so. But I do know people that have caught it. Very few people in my immediate circle, maybe one or two. Maybe because most of us are kind of working from home way before the actual pandemic has been starting. So there is definitely something. I'm not going to go around and say, this does not exist.
Oh, of course. It's stupid to say it does not exist. The question is of gravity.
Yeah, I'm certain it's not as serious. I mean, not even before, not even last year, not even then, I supported these measures, because I think it's, the state acts, and especially where the state, it's being led by bad politicians, it has that hammer and nail mentality. They only have the hammer,
so they see nails.
They see nails everywhere. So they're going to again, if they have a problem and they're not actually statesmen, and we have fewer and fewer statesmen today. They're either going to ban it or tax it or
regulate,
or maybe both,
and then regulate it on top of it.
So I think that politicians such as these, if they could ban, regulate, and tax something, at the same time, they would be the happiest persons on earth. Now, coming back to your initial question, I'm still being cautious. No, it's not cautious. It's not a good word. Maybe I'm not being reckless. Okay, so for instance, my father has had some health issues, and he has been hospitalized in the state hospital, and he came out okay, no COVID, no nothing. Okay, and while he was while he was recovering, I used to kind of if I went out, if I went to the store, I used to wear a mask. Okay, when I was seeing him, because I said, okay, he's recovering, let's not take that chance. So like again, not taking stupid risks, just just to show my father, because he doesn't approve of these measures either. So, but other than that, last year when we spoke, I was still willing to give the government some benefit of the doubt. Okay, they don't know what they're dealing with. It's a new thing, whatever. Okay, but since then we're now 1 year later, and they're saying pretty much the same things. All the predictions that you, I, and many others that were labeled like conspiracy theories, every single one of them has happened, as if, we are in on the thing. Everything from the back in November, I was saying that wait for it. They're gonna have another wave. They're gonna have a new strain. They're gonna that was the thing that happened. And again, I'm no scientist. My predictions were strictly based on the assumption that the governments they're kind of fond of power, as always, and that they will always find new ways. They don't even have to lie exactly about the strain. The British strain might be there. It's enough for them to lie, or even lie by omission about its its impact and its overall effects. So this is definitely, for me, and has been for since at least the last summer, a matter of control, and politicians being power hungry, also incompetent. So I think it's a very explosive mix of bad will and incompetence, and so everything it's here. Okay, but I do think it's 90% about control, and maybe it's maybe there's like 10% of politicians that they're really still scared, maybe misinformed. But although it's kind of hard to believe that as a politician, having access to resources and information, that you shouldn't know by now that this is a situation that can be and should be managed mainly at an individual level, not at a state level. And we have Ron DeSantis that has done pretty much that, and it's shown that, because everyone it's saying like, well, this is not possible. Yeah, it is possible. You can just go ahead, get out of people's lives, let them know, look, there is this issue, we still have this issue. Be careful, take care of yourselves, don't be reckless, wash your hands. I mean, things that, like Trump said, things were like, it's common sense. If you go out, and especially if you put your hands on, some strenuous surface that you think is like many hands have been there, maybe before you go to eat, maybe you wash your hands. But again, this was called common sense back in my day. You don't have to pass a law to enforce that. I mean, if you have to pass a law to enforce common sense, I think we're pretty much done for.
The problem is not the law. Maybe that's the
So I definitely think it's about control. It's about people. The things that we used to. I even wrote this on Facebook. They're like this little Japanese games called Tamagotchi, where you had like your own pet and you had to grow it and give it food, and I feel like they're treating us like Tamagotchis, like oh my god, my Tamagotchi has died. Okay, but I have another one which I can like pester and push around and so no, just go away. We're okay, we can do this. It's just let us be. And I think that overall the action of most governments has constituted itself in an extra threat, So you have the pandemic threat, and then you have the threat of despotic regimes, and now people have to manage two threats. So instead of just letting people manage the healthcare threat properly as they see fit, on top of that you add the threat of despotic governments, the threat of going bankrupt, the threat of having a lot of psychological issues, the threat of not being able to treat issues that you already have, or doing screening. So I think this was a major disaster, and I think that these politicians, at the very least, this is the minimum requirement. They should all just go away. Okay, this is, if not face charges at some point, because although in my opinion I do think that case could be made in international courts about genocide in some situations. I might be wrong about this, but there have been a lot of numbers, and talk, and serious publications have been signaling this, that we basically had about 2 people dead for every single other person that died of COVID, and that's a lot of people. So I don't know, but there has to be some, at least if not reckoning, at the very least, these politicians have to go away, because again, with the utmost indulgence that I can muster, they have at the very least been, a disaster in terms of competence. So very
probably amplified the crisis.
Probably, yeah, it definitely amplified it. So they definitely amplified it. The only question that remains, and that's a question for
to what extent,
and whether they did it knowingly or unknowingly. But even if they did it unknowingly, they might still have to answer legally for this. And but this is not a matter for me to decide. This is a matter for the justice system, from the various jurisdictions or international jurisdiction, if it comes to that. Since we're talking globalization, well, maybe some things should be treated on a global level. And China, they still have to be held.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So China, I was thinking about this, and I'm going to, let you ask your other questions. But I was thinking about China. You don't even have to make them pay reparations. You could say, like, look, we are not going to make you pay reparations. We're just going to have you wipe off all our debt to you. How about that? You don't have to pay anything. We don't owe you anything anymore for the, misery you've been provoking for a year, and I think we're good. So why not? I think that would be...
Yeah, or some divestment, or maybe some sanctions.
Yeah,
or things of that nature.
They have to, and mind you, not the average Chinese person.
The CCP.
CCP. So I'm sorry about the average Chinese citizen, all of the Chinese citizens, that they have to be under a Chinese communist government. But I think that holding that government to account is going to help them, in the long run.
Yeah, you were saying, we started the conversation about these things, I don't think, probably before we started taping, these things were at the level of theory.
Yes.
Several years ago, or indeed 1.5 years ago. People like us were more operating on the, we have a hobby, let's read constitutions, let's discuss the arcanes, justice system, the intricacies of law, the civilizational implications of a certain text from 300 years ago.
Yeah, it was more like an intellectual exercise than a practical application.
Right, yeah. And now we're in our own version of 1776 in a way.
Pretty much.
Not literally, not identically,
but yeah,
but metaphorically, it's right there.
Yeah, and you make a good point here, because the grievances of the American colonies initially were not that big. They were like small taxes and based generally small things. It's the same thing here right now. Where people are like, why do you complain about a mask? Why do you complain so much about having to shut down your business? Why do you complain so much about this, and this? But there's a lot of small things that actually point to a bigger problem. So yeah, this is right. Now, what was theory 3 years ago, and now it's becoming reality. The reality that people have to remind the governments that we put them there, that they're there to represent our interests.
We're a country that has a government, not a government that has a country.
Yeah, exactly. And this goes for, I think, pretty much most of the world at this point. So.
Between the invention of the sharpened stick and the birth of civilization following the advent of agriculture and social hierarchy, the weapon went from being a necessary tool to a universal symbol, capable of cowing nations or upending empires. Today, understanding the role that weapons play in society is key to understanding society. This is Standing Ground, a 1776 show. Over the course of this series, we'll be discussing the past, present, and future of the right to keep and bear arms.
I mentioned 1776. In the meantime, you have started a YouTube channel called
Yes.
1776. Links will be in the description, of course. And you're preparing something quite big in English, aren't you?
Yes, so right now, together with David Vano, which is one of my collaborators, we're preparing a show about the right to keep and bear arms. A right that I think has been misunderstood for sometimes it has been people have been misinformed about it because most media and movies talk about random shootings in the United States and how many people die by gun, etc., etc. And I think that generally the scope of the right to keep and bear arms has been lied about for quite a while now. Okay? Because the main reason for people to own guns is not to go around on rampages and shooting innocent people. The reason is to prevent violence against your life, your property, your limb. Okay, so basically, if a thug or the state or whomever might want to do you, to hurt you, to harm you in any way, they're always going to make to do a cost-benefit analysis. So if I'm a thief and I want to steal your TV or your car or whatever. If I know that you are unarmed, I'm going to make my cost-benefit analysis, and I'm going to say, yeah, this is kind of. I come on the plus side. I mean, worst case scenario, he's going to go calling the police on me, or maybe he's got a bat, but I'm going to be okay. But if I know that you have a gun in your house,
or a multitude of guns,
an arsenal, how Eddie when he was still sane was referred to this to owning a lot of guns. You might think twice about doing that. So that's the thing. That's I think this cannot be repeated enough. The reason to own guns and to be able to defend yourself, is to prevent violent acts, not to enable them. Sometimes they will enable them, but as has been proven time and time again, if you are a bad man and if you have like ill intentions, you are going, and if you want to get a gun, you are going to get a gun illegally.
Let's take a similarly extreme example, right? Having video cameras, right? I have quite a lot of them.
Yes.
A video camera can be used to tape interviews like these. Or child pornography.
Yeah.
The fault does not lie with the camera, lies with the user.
Yes.
It's probably roughly the same thing with weapons, or I don't know, drilling machines. Drilling machines can be used to expand internet infrastructure, or they can be used to drill holes into innocent people's heads.
Yeah.
It's not the problem that the drilling machine exists. The problem is with the user. But for some reason, guns have always been considered a little bit more special because, the argument usually coming from gun control people is, it's actually wrong to call them gun control because, if everyone owns guns, then guns are controlled.
Yes.
I am for gun control. That is for me to control my gun. Right? But in any event, the opposition to right to bear arms usually comes in and says, but guns are made specifically to kill. As if, yes, but, not all killings are immoral. Not all killings are legitimate. Hunting is okay. Defending yourself, yes, including lethally, is okay. War is something that happens, whether you think it's okay or not, doesn't matter. And more importantly, with guns, an armed society seems to be unbelievably polite.
Yes.
And until I've been to the United States, I was always using the example of Serbia, right, our neighbor. Right? So not very far away from where we're taping, there is a place called Belgrade, where 1 in 2 people are always armed. At least 1 in 2, sometimes more. Especially now in the spring, end of winter, early spring, a lot of people wear very long coats. So you don't know what they have underneath there. It could be an AK-47 or it could be just a wallet.
Yeah.
The basic assumption is that you should better goddamn be polite. So maybe they take out the phone or the wallet rather than the AK-47. And just very close from in any direction from Belgrade, right? You go all the way to Bulgaria or to the north to Romania or whatever. The society is at least slightly less polite.
Yes.
Because there are roughly 0 guns in the cities, at least legally, right? The same thing in the United States. The more deeply armed the population is in areas of the United, the more polite it is. The less armed it is, especially in Democrat-run cities, the less polite it is. Yeah. So they not only prevent violence, they also prevent verbal violence. They also prevent a lot of other conflicts just by existing. You don't have to use them. Right.
That's the thing. Basically, for a law-abiding citizen, and again, coming back to what we were saying, rule by law, not rule of law, not rule by law. The rule-abiding citizen should, be able to have a weapon just so he doesn't have to use it.
Right.
That's enough. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be crazies around. This is a given. This you can control everything in your environment. But and I think you strike a good point here, because I think it's a similar situation with what we were talking earlier about the rights that we have taken for granted, and we take for granted the fact that the state will defend us, that the police will defend us, and ideally this would be the case. So it would be nice, to not have to be concerned with your own safety, but experience
getting back to reality.
But getting back to reality, experience has taught us, that this is not the case. We just had a case here in Bucharest where 2 young men have been tortured and beaten to death
by the police.
By the police,
right?
By some policemen. I mean, I'm not.
Not by the police, the institution, but 2 particular police of the 16th precinct, right?
Yes. Right. So this could happen to anyone. So in this situation, you have to have at least the ability to defend yourself. I'm not saying that it's a last resort thing. You are entitled. I think everyone is entitled to this last resort, where let's say the state collapses. I don't know, something happens. There's like riots, and maybe the state is caught up in some. Maybe I always give this analogy. Let's suppose you live in the most benevolent state and free state and whatever, but something could happen at some point where maybe the state's resources are just concentrated on another crisis, and you're being attacked, and there is no one to defend you. What are you going to do? Your options are, as we talk about in our new series, your options are to comply with your attacker, whoever that may be, run, or be dead, I guess. So I think all of these are pretty bad options, And
it's not even the question of how ill-intended the state is. The Americans have this very good proverb that when seconds matter, the police is just minutes away.
Yeah.
It's not that necessarily the state has to be ill-intended, although of course oftentimes that is the case. But even when it isn't the case, it's a matter of logistics. Right? Unless you live right next to the precinct.
Yes, there may be literally the resources you need, and not only police, like even hospitals or whatever. The resources you need might not be within sufficiently safe reach, even with there's been this talk about the hospitals being crowded. Yes, that can happen. There is no way to,
and it's been happening every single year over the last 50 years. It's not something new.
And it's there is no way. This is the and I think if people would accept this idea that has been around for thousands of years, that we are not in control of every single thing in our lives, in our environment. Once you accept that, you're kind of more calm, and you can, take approach issues more calmly and more reasonably, because you know that at some point the medical system may crash or may be overloaded. Try and think of some contingencies, and with the case in our case, when we discuss gun laws, you have to have that last contingency. When there's nobody else left to defend you. Okay, you still have to have that option to be able to go to your gun locker. If someone's banging down your door, go to your locker, get your gun, hold them and try to reason with them if you have the time. But if you have that, you're on your own property, you're holding your ground, you are not aggressing anyone, you don't take any active you're not doing any active act of aggression against someone, then you have to have that option. It's I think it's a basic right, and this basic right has been around again for thousands of years. People being able to defend themselves.
Although you're going to make the show in English, presumably the targeted audience will be Europeans. Because, I don't think Americans need necessarily more lessons about that.
Yes.
But also because, and here I dare to make a suggestion, most Europeans don't know. It's not that they have forgotten, they don't know.
Yes.
That in most of Europe, the idea of bearing guns has been around until the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
Pretty much.
It's not the idea of not having guns in your house or weapons in general, not necessarily guns, not necessarily fire weapons, but weapons in general. Is the idea of not having them on your property is new.
Yeah, or at the very least, 60 or 70 years ago, the idea of owning a gun wasn't outlandish as it is today.
Right.
Okay, someone has a gun. Okay, they have a gun. Whatever.
Kind of like they have a drilling machine.
Yeah, that's it.
Or a video camera.
And another point we're making, even in our first episode, it's exactly this: that the guns have started disappearing once the authoritarian regimes started rolling in. The Nazis took away the guns, the communists took away the guns, and obviously reserved for themselves, for the dignitaries, the right to still bear those arms. And this, for every reasonable person, it would beg the question, why? Okay.
What do you mean why? To defend against the plebs.
Yeah. So and this is a very good point to make, that this wasn't having a gun wasn't an outlandish idea in Europe, although it wasn't that naturally in our DNA as
the Americans.
As the Americans. True. I mean, still we European states have been kind of more prone to centralizing and kind of taking this right away, or kind of maybe curtailing in some situations. But still, you could still get a gun.
The assumption being that generally you should be able to own a gun.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking here, for instance, the 1848 proclamation in our country's case. Like this third or the fourth proposition is giving weapons to everyone. We're not a warrior people, us Romanians.
No, we're definitely not. We're definitely not.
But even then, I mean, even at the periphery,
I would say, especially then, if you're not a warrior.
right.
Because if you're a warrior, if someone wants to attack you, you'll probably just grab everything you have in your house, and you're gonna throw pots and pans, whatever. So especially if you're not a warrior, you might need something that's giving you kind of an edge. Right.
Alexander Colt made men equal.
Yeah,
Again, as Americans would say, and they do have a point. But what I'm saying is that even not very warrior-like populations like ours still had in many of their founding documents the idea of having either the possibility or even the outright arming of the population.
Yes.
Heck, our revolution just 30 years ago, 31, 32, a segment of the revolution was about giving guns to the population. Guns were given for free to the population. So it's not like something, it's definitely not outlandish, definitely not outside of our tradition. Yet for some reason, a lot of Europeans have either forgotten or have never known about this.
I think there are two culprits of this. So first culprits are basically the European regimes from the last maybe 40 or 50 years that have been, and even the European Union has been doing like efforts to curtail the people's rights to bear arms, and the second culprit, I think, is the American media, because when you talk guns with people, with Europeans and Romanian.
Of their impressions
Most
are
of
from
their
the
impressions are
American
from the
media.
American media. Look, there's like a Columbine and that and that. And look,
It's
like,
the downside of most people speaking English.
yes,
in a way.
yes. So, and I think, and that's why I think that this show, hopefully, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to school Americans about the,
Their Second Amendment.
their Second Amendment.
jurisprudence.
Yes, obviously, but on the other hand, this kind of misconception about guns is pretty popular in a lot of American locations. So I'd be happy
That's true.
if this show will reach those people and at the very least make them interested in having a polite conversation about this and making the case that it's one other thing that I think it's a given, and if we accept, we'd be able to better interact with our environment and our society. This notion that violence is a given. Violence can happen at any time. It's not going to magically go away
And it's not going to ask for an authorization or a written stamp or no.
Obviously, it's not something that most people want. Most sane people just want to be left alone to their own devices. But we must understand that this violence can and will happen, and just wishing that it hadn't, it's not going to do it. It's not going to do it.
I have two examples for that. One of them comes from last night, and you're watching the footage from last night as I'm explaining it. At the protest, the police was expecting anything from 50 people to 50,000.
Yes.
Because it was, officially an unsanctioned protest. Everyone knew that's going to happen. Everyone knew where we would go and how we would march. But officially, legally speaking, it wasn't going to happen.
Yes.
And to their credit, the government be like, well, it's the people's right to protest. We're just going to pretend it doesn't happen, but we're not going to try to stop it. And they didn't.
They didn't, yeah.
But the police was there, prepared, surprisingly balanced, in the sense that you would have the special troops marching with their equipment in their hand rather than on their person. Because they were like, okay, the protesters didn't come heavily armed, therefore, let's show balance from our end, and will not be heavily armed as well. So as to not to provoke the protester. I mean, it was one of those rare moments when the state, or at least the representatives of the state in the streets, as you were seeing in the footage, were afraid. And they were like, hold on a second, we cannot treat this as we usually do. We kind of have to tread carefully here. And that was because a few days ago the state got a small sample of what can happen if they continue to treat the anti-pandemic measures protests like they usually attempt to. So now imagine if
I'm not sure what you're referring to here.
for instance, the gendarmerie was holding their helmets and their those longer sticks in their hands away from their person, like this,
right?
Instead of wearing them as they usually do.
Well, no, I was talking about what you mentioned something happening the last days. And
I'm thinking about the violent incident at the Unification Square a few days ago.
Yeah, but I mean
that was a provocation. Sure,
that was definitely a provocation. Yeah,
of course. But again, violence can happen.
Yes,
right. And the excuses from the gendarmerie were like, we were not prepared for that. And of course they weren't prepared because, most of the rest of the protests have been remarkably peaceful.
Yes.
With some shenanigans here and there.
Yeah, I mean, they were
very loud, of course.
Yeah, yeah. But it's okay to be loud. I mean, it's...
and other than throwing some bottles of water towards the TV, a particular TV station that is particularly panic hard and insane, other than that, nothing really untoward occurred. And
we should mention here that the media here, especially one channel in particular, two of them, has said that we haven't had protests so violent since like 30 years, and that was a lie.
Of course,
we had a protest back in 2012 when there was literally like a lot of shit lit on fire and a lot of provocation and a lot of. So this has happened. I mean, here I think they kind of like destroyed like a few
bus stops,
Bus stops, so,
signs,
whatever.
And
So-
they broke one store.
And
the
those were-
window of a store, nothing was stolen. But
and those were obviously provocateurs. So because as far as I could tell, and I've seen people with kids, like families. Those were not violent, and that we have to give some credit to the gendarmerie, and because they did
they
try
knew how to tell the difference.
They knew how to tell the difference, and as far as I could tell, there was no provocation on their part. They were.
Yeah, that surprised me at the first protest last week. Since then, I've gotten accustomed to the idea that
Yeah.
they're not gonna work like they used to 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think. I mean, I think that I think that politicians right now, I think they're kind of noticing that there's like a powder keg building. Maybe it's still not fully built, but the powder it's kind of starting to gather. And
they've seen what happened to our neighbors in Serbia.
yes, although we definitely don't have like the Serbs are kind of very quick to anger, and we're kind of more prone to this, try to not.
Yeah, but we as
Go
a
that way.
people, we explode every 30, 40 years.
Yeah, it's
but
true that
when we do,
it's true that if we explode, then it's like a scorched earth. That is true. So I mean, you can like push us around too much, and we're gonna go boom. But as far as I could tell, there was one thing I didn't appreciate, and I think that was an attempt at intimidation. I think the number of forces, the ratio of forces to people was way too big. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of police and gendarmerie for like 2,000 people. That was
we were more than 2,000. But the thing is that I mean, at some point we're hitting 10. So we're pretty big crowd.
Yeah.
But what I know, and I hate to defend the gendarmerie. I usually don't, but this time I have to.
No, I mean no, but I think let's give credit where credit is due. I mean, I don't. I'm personally, I'm trying to.
I can explain the large police presence. They mobilized around 11,000 officers, which of course sounds excessive, but then realize we had to walk more than 12 kilometers.
Yeah.
And they would have to make sure that there would be a corridor for us, stopping the traffic.
Yes. And they did a very good job of that as well. So they did direct people very gently, very effectively. So again, I like to give credit where credit is due. So
and again, they were expecting anything from 20 people to 50,000.
Yes.
So as a result, they were like, okay, I think
Yeah.
11,000 officers would be enough. And I would have to agree. I mean, even
Yeah.
with 50,000, they would have still made a good job. Now, if we had come out 100,000, probably it wouldn't have been that efficient. But still, so that's how I explain.
So that I think that makes sense. So and in the end, I'm trying to I'm especially thinking about the people in the gendarmerie that they're under orders, and I think they're under basically a part of the army. So they kind of I'm not blaming them. Okay. I'm blaming politicians because they're the ones who,
Yeah, the thing is, when we stopped to boo at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which is their bosses,
Yes.
Usually when you protest at that institution, they usually try to come in and try to, defend
Right.
it. Not last night. Last night they tried to defend the TV station, hoping that we won't storm in, and we didn't.
Yeah.
But, at their bosses, they were like, whatever. So, because, and this is something that, everyone knows that everyone knows that everyone knows, but the politicians still don't think that we know, namely that the officers in the streets know that most of their orders are bullshit. And they know that the populace kind of has a point.
I'm sure, but I think that
So it's something that we used to do.
Bullshit order is still an order. So there's nothing you can really do about that. I mean,
what I'm trying to hit is what we were doing in the 80s. You guys pretend to order to us. We pretend to comply, but in the end, everyone does whatever they want. Right. So that's pretty much what they were. But this is one example, right? When the representatives of the state were. Okay, now we kind of have to tread carefully, whether we like it or not.
And wind it down a little bit. Because,
whether we like it or not. Right? Then another example would be in the United States. Heavily armed counties or states, suddenly the pandemic is over there. All right. Think of Iowa, right? More than 2 months. Think of Florida, more than 6 months. Think of Texas more recently. That's where the pandemic is over.
Yes.
Where do you see most of these intimidations? In churches, in synagogues, and even in mosques? It's in New York. It's in California. It's in
Canada,
right?
Yeah.
But New York, the New York City, not the state. Upstate New York is fine, but the cities, the places where they're least legally armed.
Yes.
Because that's another distinction there, legally armed. Because the thugs in New York, in Chicago,
they're probably going. I mean,
they're all heavily armed.
Yes,
they are all. I mean, I've seen those in Chicago myself. They are all heavily armed. It's not a discussion there, right? But in the places that are least legally armed within the United States, that's where the pandemic rules are the most draconic.
Yeah,
and it's true in Europe as well. Where are the least draconic rules? Well, it's Sweden, which is a heavily armed country, by the way.
Well, so is the Czech Republic, and I think they're still in the Czech Republic. They're still, and so is Switzerland. And in Switzerland, they just had a rant being put down by.
But in Switzerland they decided at canton level. And they've had local referendums, and if the referendum said, okay.
So that's the thing. I mean, there was this. I think yesterday or today there was like a commotion but it wasn't at a city level. Not at a federal level, so that's also an important distinction.
And I agree with that. I mean, if most of the people in the city want these rules, then fine. I'll move.
Yeah, I'll move.
I will definitely move.
Stay okay with your crazy rules.
I will still disagree, and I will move. But
is it right? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely their right.
It should be their right, especially if it's temporary. Even if temporary means 2 years, it's still temporary, and that's okay.
Yes.
But I'm talking nationally, right? I mean, in Czech Republic, yes, the rules nationally sound terrible, but then you go down to the regional level, and the heavily armed regions of Czech Republic.
Well, this is a thing. I'm ignorant about how exactly the Czech Republic is being, administered. If you have like a kind of a.
On paper, it sounds very much like Romania, but in practice, a lot of things are decentralized, including public health care.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
They're very decentralized, and the governors of the regions be like, the people of my region are going to shoot me, so therefore, Mr. Prime Minister, I mean, I'm sure you think this is an urgent situation, but my situation is more urgent than yours, therefore, no lockdowns in my region, thank you.
Yes.
Right? So is that. Serbia, again, very armed population, very little pandemic rules, especially since July last year when they burned down the presidency, literally. Yeah. Bulgaria, same thing, full stadia after, 72 days of 100,000 people protesting non-stop and not a blip on the pandemic graphs. Right, the Minister of Health Affairs there came in and said, look, we kind of like the idea of not burning alive. Therefore, these are the rules. Please observe them. If you don't, there's room in the hospital, and that will be pretty much it, right? And they tried again this spring to introduce mandatory rules, and they renounced them 4 days later because everyone was like, nah.
And the same happened, and I like that they try to in Finland they just tried to institute a lockdown like a few days ago.
The Constitutional Court be like,
no.
because right, because in Finland they inherited the concept of allemansrätten, or the man's right to roam in nature, which only exists in the Swedish constitution, but it's been inherited in the Finnish law because they were a Swedish colony, and as a result, the Constitutional Court, that's probably not kosher.
Yeah, and the thing is that I've been talking to people in Finland like 2 months ago, and they're like, You're wearing mask indoors? What? Is that a mandatory thing?
Yes.
And they told me, look, some of us wear it, but they wear it voluntarily. They just want to wear it, whatever, just wear it. But there's like, I'm going to the mall, I'm going to the restaurant, and people are being careful. Obviously, maybe they wash their hands, they whatever, but there's not a compulsory thing to wear masks, whatever. There's a mask mandate. So
right. It's surprising in a way that Scandinavia, which usually is more collectivistic and more socialistic, has managed this particular type of hysteria.
As is surprising of Sweden. I mean, I think. That both you and I and most of people in our circle have been blasting Sweden and
we don't really hold Sweden in very high regard.
Yes,
but on this particular issue,
it's weird that maybe even in Romania we've seen people that are on the hard left suddenly start talking about individual liberties and freedoms. and being more libertarian, at least in a discourse, in their discourse, than the hardcore libertarians in Romania. So then, to me, it's like, this is like a clown war. What's happened? I mean,
my first in my operations of shilling and slowly shifting this away from a crisis mode, and it's been working fine so far,
Yes.
as I'm evaluating the results. But one of my first allies in the Romanian parliament was a particular member of the parliament was the most far left in the chamber. By
Yeah.
far. I mean, that guy believes in nationalization of your house if it's too big, right? And that guy was the first one to start sounding like me. And
Yeah.
then we met because I know most of the politicians. I
Yes.
know, and they're like, I saw the discourse on your page, and I'm like,
Yeah.
On this
Yeah,
one,
and I've seen these things where you get, this is people that were like 2 years ago were at each other's throats about LGBT rights or whatever, and now you see hardcore conservatives and hardcore leftists kind of getting together, and I think this is a signal. At least I might be wrong about this. Maybe just some shilling or whatever, but what I see is people actually getting together when they see their true rights being threatened.
Right.
And people, maybe when all this is gone, maybe they'll just go back to their own
I'm sure that's gonna be
their
the
own
case.
foods.
Yes.
But now, again, and you know this. Like there've been people that were on the hard left that we used to make fun of and maybe poke at on social media, and now we're like, hey, we're in this together. Come on, it's like we have some common ground to discuss, and I think this should be, again, I'm not sure we're going to be able to, but I think we should use this. This is a prime occasion, like back in 1776, where we can actually have the opportunity. We have the opportunity to start to learn to talk. And to compromise and to negotiate. It's a hard thing. I think we're compared to them, to the American colonies back then, were infants in terms of like
Yes.
political philosophy, awareness of our political environment. We're really like I think infants. I think we're really stupid compared to them. But we can start learning now. I think it's a good opportunity to do this.
We've seen this happening in Deutschland, right? I mean, the lateral thinking movement contains anything from, yes, legit neo-Nazis,
Yes.
to global homo leftists.
Yes.
Seeing the flag of Imperial Germany marching next to the LGBT flag.
This is clown wallet. Even the Labour Party in Britain.
Right.
Some of them are like, hey, you can't do this. This is stupid.
Right.
I mean, the Labour Party. These are people that are essentially authoritarian, and they're saying, look, you can't curtail people's rights like that. I'm like, wait, what's happening here? It's like-
Right. And at least in Germany, they've been able to put it under the umbrella of lateral thinkers, as they call it, Querdenker or something like that is the term in German, whatever. They've been able to do it, and that's probably one of the reasons why right now it was the Catholic Easter, which was obviously much bigger in Germany than it is in Romania. Ours will be a month from now. That the government had to go back to the drawing board.
Yes.
Is that hold on a second?
and I mean, it's clear that Merkel. I think Merkel was initially they kind of wanted to just institute lockdowns during the Easter, and I think they kind of probably got the signal that that's a bad idea, and that that might be the final straw. And obviously, and this again shows the level of incompetence of our politicians, that we basically copy whatever they do. So we don't have, and it's a proof that we don't have statesmen in Romania.
And not just in Romania.
Not just in Romania, but at the very least, and that's another thing we should probably discuss at some point, at the very least, if you go to Germany or France or even Britain, okay, you don't see Boris Johnson just pushing, some low-level, clerk in front of or Secretary of State to do his job. He's coming over there. He's kind of taking responsibility for it. I used to like Boris Johnson. I kind of totally dislike him right now. But at the same time, he at least has tried to be polite about it. He had this discourse where we gotta hunker down a little bit, let's wait a little bit, as opposed to our politicians who've been basically bullying the entire population of Romania, and treating us as if we're like they're like they were serfs on their land or something. So so this is to the credit of European politicians, which I don't like at all, most of them. But at the very least, they're kind of taking responsibility for this. Look, I'm locking you guys down, but it's me who's locking you down. So locking you down. So at the very least, they've been doing that.
At the very least, they admit that it is a political decision, and of course it is.
It is. So even Macron, okay, I'm locking you guys down for a month or not. But he actually himself, he came on TV. He said, look, we're going to do this and that, and I'm definitely sure that he's going to answer politically for this. So. So that's
Madame le Président soon.
I don't know.
I mean, that's going to be terrible, but at the same time, you're thinking, well, these politicians have to be punished in a way.
Yes.
And politically, it's the easiest.
It's easiest and the least way that they should be they should answer. I mean, it's I think. And again, I still think this is the right way to go about. I think I still believe in the rule of law in the institutions, and I think we should hold on to that as much as possible. We should try to solve these issues lawfully, and I think that still the laws and the judges will most of the times will give the right answers to these issues and to these grievances that we have right now, and they have been so to their credit. So. Hopefully, we will be able to solve this, in a civil way. We'll be able to, and politicians will answer first off, like you said, politically, and then if the justice system finds that they're guilty of some wrongdoings, then that's
criminally as well,
or criminally as well,
at least in a court of law.
Yes, yes.
Ideally, probably it should be like it is finally now in the United States, where the chief of the CDC cries on TV begging you to observe her stupidity.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, okay, now that's a free country.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
that's a free country.
Please do something. Yeah, and I may be going to do it.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go 100% with you, maybe I'll go 70% with you and 30%
or not at all.
Or not at all, yes, or zero.
Or zero,
right?
yeah.
Zero has to be an option.
Yes, always it has to, because I think that, and this should probably be something that everyone should think about, that most of the time when a politician tells you to do something, no is a sufficient answer for everyone. You don't have to justify yourself.
Yeah.
As long as the police, the politician, the justice system cannot prove that you have infringed on someone else's rights or liberties, no should be a sufficient answer. Do that. No. I don't have to give any justification to you. What the Secretary of State we have right now, the
Madame Moldovan.
Yeah, who's like, you should go out and shop less or
shop more for every other week or something. Change your
shopping habits or we're concerned about the mobility of the population. I'm sorry, lady, that is not your concern.
None of
you can be concerned as
being concerned is a fundamental right.
Yeah, it's your fundamental right, but it is my fundamental right to completely ignore your concern or give attention to it, whatever. But it's everybody's right to take that concern and use it, or just throw it out the window. So
and here's another aspect that maybe we'll develop on this on the Romanian channel, but it has to be said here. At least in this country, we have a very weird situation right now where the politically appointed health minister, Vlad Voiculescu, who could answer politically.
Yes.
Okay, a few years from now when the elections are due, or maybe inside his party, whatever, delegated the entirety of his responsibilities to some random penny card technocrats who are not accountable, not even to their own political party because they're not party members, and let alone to the public because they cannot be voted out of office unless the entire government collapses, which it might. But that's going to take a few months. Yeah, that's an issue for a few months from now. And that's another difference that we've seen in this country, as opposed to most of the European Union. There are a few similar situations elsewhere as well, but not this kind of lack of accountability, which probably they wouldn't be able to do if we were a more armed country.
Yeah, probably. I mean, even this situation, I don't think we need to be armed. I think it's enough for people to say, look, I don't want to hear some, lowly, second-tier Democrat, I want to hear you. I voted for you. You are the one who's making the decisions. You are the one who's going to answer politically. I don't need you to push someone else in front of you to eventually take the blame if things go south, because I think this is
They will go south.
they will go south, and I think this is an insurance policy for these guys. You know that if some decision gets questioned, then they're going to just, because shifting blame is it has been done here, has been done by president. They've been doing and
it's what bureaucrats do.
and it's a thing, and not only bureaucrats. It's like a lot of if the parliamentary system gets corrupted, it's very easy to just throw blame around, because throw it on some arcane procedure nobody knows about, and you're gonna say, yeah, I didn't know what I did vote, because the procedure was this and that, and politicians are going to find very creative ways of shifting blame, covering blame. So this is not something new. So I would like to see here, politicians, especially our president, whom has been, we only see him like planting trees and whatever.
Oftentimes sleeping. Because he at least he has a bigger legitimacy. Now I didn't vote for him, but
no,
62%, whatever the population.
He definitely has. I mean,
more legitimacy.
I voted for him twice.
Oh, right, I didn't. I voted for him in 14 because the alternative was terrible, but this time around I didn't. Still, with his legitimacy at the very least. Probably more people would be following. But this time around, probably he is a bit informed that things aren't working the way as intended.
And this is about voting. I mean, it's about people, politicians getting questioned and accountable. I voted for these guys, for some of these guys that are now doing, this all crazy thing about locking us down. I voted for them, and I not only that, I have our prime minister. I have when he was a libertarian. Apparently now this is a thing that you can be a libertarian and not be a libertarian at some point. The complete opposite once you get in power. Hello, surprise there. Not only I voted for him, I recommended people following him on Facebook when he was just writing economic things, because back then he was writing and saying commonsensical things most of the time. And then I got last year people coming to me as, why did you recommend this guy to me? Why have you, even convinced me to vote for him? And now I want him to lose the next elections badly, okay? Because I feel like I've been cheated, okay? He has been, talking about a platform, and now he's doing the exact opposite of that platform.
And put in the situation for you to be accountable to
Yes,
your
I'm
friends
accountable to
politically.
And I should shut up more. To me, it's like I'm going to be very careful next time. When recommending that someone vote someone else. It was a bad judgment on my part, and I completely take responsibility for that. I should have been able to see not only him but also other people in their entourage
we got a lot of flack right before the parliamentary elections when we recommended cross-voting, depending on what county you are, with the aim of fragmenting the parliament as much as possible, which finally happened. And we got a lot of flack because we're like, oh, why don't you support one? And I'm like, because I actually believe they're all crap. It's just that from that wisdom, I don't draw the conclusion that we shouldn't be voting. No, let's vote. But let's vote in such a way that none of them can rule. Because the government that governs the least is the best government.
The best government ever.
Right. And that's probably something that we're going to have to teach Europeans to do. Because in Europe, unlike the United States, it's rarely two parties. It's usually at least three, and oftentimes 10. Right? I'm thinking of the Netherlands, where it's like 12 parties in the parliament. I vote for fragmentation.
And that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. Fragment. I mean, if you're not sure that you're going to be led the right way, or at the very least, make sure you're not being led the bad way. I mean, just don't give enough people enough power so they can, push you around and do whatever they want with you. So, I mean, it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously, everyone wants a good government, but if you can have a good government, at least make sure you don't have a bad one, or if it's a bad one, they don't have enough power. So
make it less powerful and
Yes.
preferably more corrupt, because with corrupt politicians you can negotiate.
Yes,
rather
yes.
with sincere ideologues.
which are psychopaths
Yeah.
more so, and
you can't negotiate
and
anything with
nihilistic,
those
and
people.
there is no
Because I'm looking here, especially with the pony card secretaries of state, right, and scientists,
Yes.
who are very upset about the fact that whenever they propose something stupid, like shutting down whatever, and they get from the politicians that, look, we can't do that.
yeah.
Politically speaking, you're proposing suicide, and no, we're not big fans of suicide.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're very
And I'm the one committing it, not you.
and they're very upset of the idea. What do you mean you censor medical decisions through politics? And I'm like, I'm sorry, through politics we interact in this society.
Yes,
We're not
yes.
a big hospital, we're a nation.
Yeah, we're a nation, and we're not. I mean, and I think this is one of the matters that a lot of people have been kind of ignoring. There's got a lot of people like, trust the science. Okay, maybe I trust the science. Although I think the scientific committee, the science committee, as well as the journalistic committee, compromise themselves badly.
Yes.
Okay, but when I'm going to interact with you, I'm going to interact politically. You're a citizen, I'm a citizen. There has to be a political environment in which to work. This is how we work. This is how we've been working for thousands of years.
Politics exists whether you think it doesn't.
Yeah. So and science and specialists and whatever, they're there, and they should be there solely on an advisory capacity. Look,
Right.
That's your advice, good or bad. Then it's my decision whether to take it or not, and the politician's
And
decision.
to the extent I'm taking it.
Yeah. I mean, granted, you might be right, okay, and I might be wrong in not listening to you, but it's still my decision, and that's why I think that we have to separate these two issues. Always think of both of them. I mean, not completely disregard science. That's stupid, okay. But at the same time, we can discuss only in scientific terms, especially as the discourse has been. Obviously, people, this is not what they mean, but a lot of people are asking questions like, do you believe in science, or do you believe in COVID? No, it's not a religion. Okay?
There you go.
No, do not believe in science in general. I'm not like
I may trust science. I may trust the method. I may
Yes.
trust a particular
Yes.
scientist. I may distrust another
Yeah.
one. But the idea of believing, it's kind of, there is a term for that, scientism. Scientism.
Yeah.
And one final question about your upcoming show,
Yes.
because I have to ask this.
Yes.
What threats do you see to it?
To the show.
Yes.
Well, I've been thinking about that, I don't see any clear threats to it, because we are definitely doing a show which has two sides to it. One, it's the philosophical idea that people have a right to defend themselves, and how that philosophical idea has been treated and how it has come about through history. And then we have actually three aspects. So then we have a technical aspect, which is kind of a more fun aspect for gun enthusiasts. Maybe what kind of gun was used in Japan like 300 years ago or 200 years ago, or what's the difference between this gun and that gun, and why is that important? And the third aspect, which is also important, is how this is being legally treated. And one of the things we're going to touch on quite extensively, hopefully, it's regulation through taxation, which we see happening, I think, in some states in the United States already, where you don't tell people they're allowed to own guns, but you make some things too expensive, okay, and then most people won't be able to own guns. Now, I don't see any threats to it right now. I think we'll have to make it clear somehow that we're not endorsing any unlawful action. Okay, we're not glorifying violence. and that is important because we're not doing that. The only thing is the main the crux of the matter is the right of the people to defend themselves. Okay, so I don't see any threats right now. I mean we're very very small channel. Okay, at this point. So I don't know. Do you see any threats to it?
I'm thinking of the increasingly pussified outlook of social media in general and including YouTube, which although has been more tolerant than other social media, is still...
Oh, so you mean like shadow banning or outright like banning?
Outright censorship, various flagging. I mean, for instance, one of the reasons why there's still no footage of me shooting guns is because I think increasingly...
I think it would be... I wish we would reach the level where we would be getting some flag or getting ban or shadow ban or whatever, because that would mean that people are listening to us. Right now, we're still small. We're still beginning this. I've started this channel in October last year, so it's still growing up. We have probably 800 odd followers right now. But that would be a sign that we have enough viewers and that maybe someone is being... we start to matter. And maybe at that point we'll probably expand to other platforms, like BitChute, and I think even in the last years a lot of platforms just popped up in the wake of this whole censorship craze. So I mean, I think we'll adapt. Hopefully we'll get to that level where people will say, yeah, I'm gonna vote down your video and maybe report your video, and that'll mean that we're doing something that something is being done, and we're moving some people, whether one way or the other.
And in terms of backlash, I mean, I don't know how accustomed. That's why I'm asking whether you're targeting specifically Europeans, because there aren't that many Europe-based gun channels, especially not in English. I mean, sure, there are the localized ones. There are a few German ones who are pretty good. There is at least one that is Romanian that is pretty good. There are 2 or 3 Swedish ones, but there isn't one that is more international necessarily. Well,
here's the thing. I think that...
Do you anticipate any sort of backlash like
No, I don't think... on the contrary. So this is one of my ideas, that these are ideas that are at the moment are not being adopted by a lot of people. And I'm not only talking about the right to keep and bear arms. I'm talking about fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are a thing that it's completely extraneous to a lot of people. And I do think that it's helpful for us to, instead of just each of us producing content in their own language, have at least some segments that are in English, so we can connect with like-minded people from the United States, from Germany, from Britain, from Spain, from everyone else, because this way, I mean, everything is getting globalized. These ideas should get globalized. This idea of fundamental rights should be getting globalized, and I think to a lesser or higher degree they're getting, and credit goes to a lot of American channels, like the European Report and Daily Wire, and they've been doing a lot of I mean, obviously their main target is the United States, but they've been getting out of the United States. They've been doing a lot of progress I mean, if you have a lot of Romanian people that regularly watch these shows, okay? So I think we should all get together, be at least able to communicate ideas, to make sure that those ideas are better spread and better understood by everyone, and mainly make our cause known, and make known the fact that our cause is fundamental rights. It's prosperity for every one of us. It's freedom from every one of us, for everyone else. So I think it's that's why this is one of the reasons I started this particular bit of the show in English, and I'm probably going to also translate some of the podcasts that I've been doing in the past, because I think we need to connect. We need to go out. We need to be open with like-minded people from other countries.
Fair enough. Then I'll leave it like that.
Thank you.
At least for this episode. 1776. Links will be in the description.
Like, follow, and subscribe.
And thanks a lot for watching. See you around on the sofa. Cheers.